Have you ever been at a party, a work event, or even just a family dinner, and someone walks up to you, all smiles, and asks, "So, what do you do?" Or "How's the weather been treating you?" And something inside you just deflates. Not because you're rude, or because you dislike people. It's because that kind of question feels like a door closing instead of one opening. Like you were standing on the edge of a real conversation, and someone just handed you a script. You've probably spent years wondering if this reaction makes you antisocial, or exhausting to be around. You watch other people glide through these conversations so easily, laughing about their weekend, complaining about traffic, asking about vacation plans. It looks so effortless for them, and you're left wondering, why doesn't it feel that way for me? Why does it feel more like work than warmth? Well, here's what I want to tell you right now. That feeling is not a character flaw. It's not immaturity, and it's not arrogance disguised as depth. That quiet deflation you feel when a conversation stays on the surface is actually your mind telling you something very specific about how you're wired to connect with other people. Instead of apologizing for it or trying to force yourself to change, it might be time to finally understand what it really means. We live in a culture that treats small talk like a social tax. You pay it in the elevator, at the office kitchen, at the start of every phone call. And most people pay it without a second thought. It's the "how's the weather?" The "how was your weekend?" The "I'm good, you?" exchange that nobody is really listening to. It's like going through the motions of connection without any of the actual feeling. We can dive into big ideas, personal experiences, the weird thoughts that have been sitting in the back of our minds for weeks. We love questions that don't have easy answers. We crave conversations where both people walk away feeling like they learned something new about the world or about each other. In those moments, there's no drain, there's no deflation. There's only this incredible sense of having actually been somewhere meaningful together. This distinction is crucial. Psychology suggests that people who dislike small talk aren't necessarily introverted, though there can be an overlap. Instead, they might be what's called cognitively oriented. This means their brains are naturally drawn to patterns, systems, ideas, and complex information. For them, connection isn't built on shared social pleasantries. It's built on a shared exploration of ideas. When a conversation is just about exchanging surface-level facts like the weather or what you did last night, it doesn't give their brain anything to work with. It's like asking a deep-sea diver to be content splashing around in a puddle. The social world, however, is largely built for what we might call socially oriented people. These are individuals who connect through shared feelings, social harmony, and rapport. For them, small talk isn't a barrier. It's the warm-up. It's how they build comfort and trust before moving to deeper topics. It's a vital social lubricant that signals friendliness and good intentions. Neither way of connecting is better or worse. They're just different operating systems. The problem arises when the world only recognizes one of them as the default. So, if you're someone who feels that deflation, you're not broken. Your brain is simply optimized for a different kind of connection. It craves substance. It wants to build bridges of understanding, not just exchange pleasantries. You're not bad at conversation. You're just being handed the wrong tools for the job you're trying to do. You're being given a hammer when what you really need is a key. The goal isn't to force yourself to love small talk. It's to get better at gently steering conversations toward the territory where you come alive. It's about finding other people who also want to skip the script and talk about something real. So the question we should be asking isn't "Why do I hate small talk?" A much better question is, what does my dislike of small talk tell me about how my mind is built to connect, and how can I honor that? Understanding this doesn't just relieve you of guilt. It gives you a roadmap to finding the deep, fulfilling connections you've been looking for all along. Thanks for watching. If this resonated with you, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more. See you next time. Let me introduce you to someone. Let's call him Ryan. He works in a creative field, has a small but deeply loyal circle of friends, and has been described his whole life as too serious or intense. At office parties, he is the one refilling his drink a little too often just to have somewhere to be, not because he is a classic introvert. He can hold a room when the topic has real weight, but because a conversation about weekend plans or what someone watched on Netflix last night makes him feel more alone than if he'd stayed home by himself. For years, Ryan assumed this was something he needed to fix, that someday small talk would feel easier, more natural, more like what it seemed to be for everyone else. He pushed himself to laugh at the right moments, to ask the follow-up questions, to perform the warmth he was not quite feeling. And every time he drove home from one of those events, He felt hollowed out in a way he could not fully explain. Not tired exactly, more like he'd spent 3 hours being someone slightly adjacent to himself. What Ryan did not know, and what most people in his position do not know, is that there is actual psychological research that explains what he was experiencing. Researchers who study what they call need for cognition, a measurable personality trait that reflects how much a person is naturally drawn to deep thinking and complex ideas, have found consistently that people who score high on this trait find shallow conversation actively unsatisfying, not neutral, not just not their preference, actively unsatisfying. The way hunger feels when you eat something with no real nutrition. Your body registers that something is missing even before your brain finds the words for it. And this is where people get it wrong, because the assumption is always that discomfort with small talk comes from arrogance, from thinking you are too smart or too deep for ordinary conversation. But that framing misses the point entirely. It is not about superiority. It is about wiring. These are people whose brains are genuinely oriented toward meaning-making in their social interactions. They are not looking for a performance of connection, they are looking for actual connection. And when the conversation stays on the surface, the connection does not happen, and the brain notices. There is also research on what psychologists call authenticity in social interaction, the degree to which a person feels that what is being expressed in a conversation matches what is actually being felt. Studies consistently show that people with a high need for authenticity report more anxiety and less satisfaction in contexts that require social performance. And small talk, structurally, is often a performance. It is a script that both parties agree to follow without saying so. There are right answers and wrong answers. There are acceptable topics and unacceptable ones. And for people who are sensitive to that gap between what is being performed and what is actually being felt, navigating that script takes real energy. Energy they did not budget for and would not easily get back. Then there is the sensory and cognitive processing piece. Elaine Aron has done research on highly sensitive people whose nervous systems take in and process emotional and social information more deeply than average, and found that these individuals are not just more emotionally reactive, they are running more cognitive processes per interaction, more analysis, more pattern recognition, more internal processing of what is being said and what it might mean. And when you are doing that kind of work, even a surface-level conversation costs you more than it costs the person standing next to you. You come home from the party exhausted not because something went wrong, but because your brain was working harder the entire time. Think about what all of this costs over time. If you are someone who finds small talk genuinely draining, you have probably developed a whole architecture of workarounds that you do not even fully notice anymore. You arrive late to avoid the pre-event mingling. You volunteer to help in the kitchen or at the bar so you have a task to anchor yourself to. You find the one person at the gathering who wants to talk about something with actual substance, and you stay close to them for the rest of the night like a lifeline. You check your phone more than you would like to admit, not because anything is there, but because it gives you somewhere to look. These are not antisocial behaviors, they are adaptations. They are how a certain kind of mind protects its energy inside a social culture that rewards surface-level warmth and penalizes anyone who needs more than that. But here is the thing about adaptations: when you rely on them long enough, you stop being able to tell the difference between protecting yourself and hiding from something. And that distinction matters, because I want to be honest here, and I think honesty is what actually makes this useful. The discomfort with small talk can become a hiding place. There is a version of this, and only you know if this is the version that fits you, where the preference for deep conversation is less about depth and more about control. Real conversation, the kind that actually opens something, requires risk. It requires saying something that might not land, might be misunderstood, might expose a part of you that you are not entirely sure about yet. And occasionally, the rejection of small talk is less about needing more meaning and more about avoiding the vulnerability that comes with any real connection at all. Retreating into "I only like deep conversations" can become its own kind of armor, a way of staying selective enough that nothing ever gets too close, a way of curating connection so carefully that it rarely actually happens. And if you have ever spent significant time alone, not because you chose solitude, but because the bar for acceptable conversation was set so high that almost nobody could clear it, that is worth sitting with honestly, not as a judgment, but as information. The people who seem to navigate this best are the ones who have stopped treating their preference as a verdict on everyone else. Small talk is not meaningless for everyone who uses it. For a lot of people, it is genuinely how they build trust and warmth slowly, brick by brick. Whether comment by whether comment until something real eventually surfaces underneath. The issue is not that small talk is worthless. The issue is that for some minds, it is not the pathway. It is not how their particular door opens. And there is a real difference between knowing that about yourself and using it as an excuse to never let anyone in. The question to ask yourself is not, do I hate small talk? That question already has an answer. The more useful question is, what am I actually looking for when I show up to a conversation? And am I creating any space for other people to give it to me? Because connection, even the deep kind, requires a beginning. And sometimes the beginning is awkward and surface level and a little bit boring. That is not a bug. That is just how trust gets started between two people who do not know each other yet. So where does that leave someone like Ryan? Or like you? If any of this has been landing closer to home than you expected, it doesn't leave you with a list of small talk tips. It does not leave you with scripts for making chit-chat feel less hollow. That is not the work here. The work here is something quieter and more honest than that. The first thing is simply to stop performing a version of connection that does not work for you, and then feeling ashamed when you come home empty. When you spend years forcing yourself through social scripts that your nervous system keeps rejecting, you do not become better at connecting. You become better at pretending, and pretending has a cumulative cost. It creates this low-level fog of disconnection that people usually blame on being busy, or stressed or introverted, when really what is happening is that they have spent so long being a slightly adjusted version of themselves around other people that they've lost the thread back to what genuine connection actually feels like for them. The second thing is real permission, not just intellectual acknowledgement to enter conversations differently, not rudely, not aggressively, but honestly. There is a version of this that looks like you meet someone at a gathering, and instead of trading the usual script, you say something like, "I'm genuinely bad at small talk, so I am just going to ask you something real. What has been on your mind lately that you have not had the chance to talk about?" And more often than you would expect, people's faces change, because a lot of people are exhausted by the performance too. They were just waiting for someone to drop the script first. You can be that person. The third thing is to notice when your preference for depth is serving you, and when it is protecting you from something. Those are two different experiences, and they feel different from the inside if you pay close enough attention. Serving you looks like restoration. Protecting you looks like relief that slowly flattens into distance. One leaves you feeling more yourself. The other leaves you feeling safe but a little bit hollow. Both are useful information. Neither one is a judgment. And the fourth thing, maybe the most important, is to remember that the goal was never to find conversations that are perfectly deep and meaningful from the first sentence. The goal is real connection, and real connection between two human beings is almost always slightly awkward at the start. It finds its footing over time. The people who are best at it are not the ones who have eliminated small talk from their lives. They're the ones who have learned to move through it lightly without getting stuck in it, without pretending it's more than it is, and without using their impatience with it as a wall that keeps everyone at a comfortable and ultimately lonelier distance. Your psychology is not a flaw. The way your mind searches for meaning in exchange, the way it registers the gap between performance and presence, the way it gets hungry for conversations that actually go somewhere, none of that is something you need to fix. It is just how you are wired to connect. The only real mistake is spending so long managing that wiring, apologizing for it, hiding it, performing around it, that you never actually use it to build the kind of connections you've been looking for all along. If this resonated not just as an interesting idea, but in that quieter place where you actually recognized yourself, then you are probably someone who thinks carefully and honestly about the way you move through the world. That kind of mind tends to find real value in going deeper. I make these videos for exactly that kind of person. There is more waiting for you on your screen right now. Subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next one.